some people ask, Swami, where are you? I went there so many times, I couldn't meet you. I tell them, see, I am a Toriladi Swami. Toriladi Swami means what, you know? Yes, worker Swami. I have to keep working. I have to keep working, going around places here, there. Most of the time I spend on board the trains. So my intimate friends are the railway crew. What to do? And but that is the reason I feel so blessed to be in the midst of all of you, all devotees. Once again, I invoke the grace of the Lord Almighty to bless you all with all happiness, peace of mind, and a life ahead, a meaningful life ahead. Thank you very much. Thank you, Swamiji, for being kind enough to invite me to this holy August audience.
Who is to thank who he does it?
You are right, Swami. Thank you so much once again, all of you. Hari Om.
Last one program.
Is the book release of Yogacharya David Hickenbottom. He follows the parampara of Yogananda Paramahamsa. Sometime during 54, when Param Pujya Papa Mataji went on a global tour, they happened to meet Mother Hamilton and her husband in Seattle. From that day onwards, the bondage started building up. And they came here. They were inspired by Papa's approach. And they came here with the definite determination that they should attain what Sankalpa they have been given. And so they stayed here, and Pujya Swamiji also became very close to them. And then they went back after scaling the heights. She was a source of inspiration to many in Seattle and others. And David Ji became one of them. And he committed himself to that particular line of approach. And finally he became the Yogacharya. And sometime during 90s he came here. He was also very much impressed by Papa Mataji's approach, and more so with Pujya Swami Satchidananda Ji, because the Papa Mataji were not there at that time in flesh and blood. And they were closely moving with Pujya Swamiji. He had written that Swamiji is my second mother. He was to come for the centenary celebrations. But God willed otherwise. He dropped the body in August. Many of his friends were able to know that David Ji has made a notes on his travel in India and his experiences and reflections while he was in ashram. They were able to compile in the form of a book in 2 parts and named it as Spiritual India. So that book will be released now. We request our friend Larry Ji to say a few words and release the book. The first book will be given to Sri Nalini, who has also been very close to David Ji. David Ji will be supremely happy that this book is released on the centenary occasion of Param Pujya Swamiji, and also it is received by Nalini Amma.
Can't see. Can you put up my clips of
Okay, very good. Thank you. Perfect. Thanks. I'll introduce myself in just a minute, but I wanted to finish what Swami Muktananda just discussed, and that was what happened to Mother in 1954. She published this in the Vision in 1968, and it was called God Comes to Visit, as Mother had been praying for help after her own guru had died. And he left earlier than she would have liked, and she didn't get enough time with him on the higher paths. She was a householder, something not known by many people. Her first husband, who she had children with, had no use of his arms. He was electrocuted, and she had to handle all the finances and jobs for the family for 20, 30 years. And so she had gone through quite a bit, and she was very occupied. And the higher teachings were known to her, but she hadn't experienced enough time with her master to stabilize her mind. So what she wrote about Papa in 1954, when he was visiting their home, and this a confirmation that her request for help on the path was given to her inwardly, as she knew that then Papa was the means. Papa was the very person that had been promised to her in the vision. As I stood before Papa, the bliss which permeates his whole being engulfed me like a flood. It was as though I was lifted up into the arms of God, and I felt like a little child. With tears flowing from my eyes, I asked, "Will you be my Papa too?" He smiled his ever blissful smile and answered, "Yes, he is Papa to all. All are his children." And so that's why we're here, is because this is a universal teaching that Papa instilled in all the people who worked with him. And Swami Muktananda, through his permission and grace, has published this book here in India at our request. And it was because of that, though we have a different lineage, that universal teaching that Papa insisted on and exemplified so well, that we are here. Unfortunately, David is not the person talking to you now. I can tell you a little bit. When I first met David, I was 25, he was 22. He'd been with Mother a couple of years, and I just started. We moved very closely from that point until his passing. In almost all things we were engaged, the major things we were engaged in, both sides. I was there for him and he was there for me, and many others as well. But we were very close and stayed close all those years. When I first talked to Swamiji in 1996, I felt Mother so strongly here that when David knew more about the ashram, he decided to come in 1998, and we did a tour together throughout the country. So I should note Swami Vishwananda of Bangalore helped us with all of that. Swami Muktananda had me keep this book secret. So we had to have it covered. so no one could see it. Quote from Mother about David. I have a very from back. I have a very worthy successor, which is why I made David a minister. I have every respect for him. I know he's a God man. He is very spiritual, and I know his judgment is good. When I finally retire, why certainly David will be the one that will take over for me. I hadn't heard that. I wasn't there when that was said. And I don't know what the context is. Someone found it in any of Mother's speeches. We have many of them transcribed, or something she wrote. It was very nice to see. She had given him publicly her mantle, which some gurus don't do that publicly. She made it clear. She gave him her title, Yogeshwarya, which was given to her by her master, Yogananda. And so he was left holding everything, all of the great virtue and things that Mother had built in the spirit. And did a very wonderful job. I only wish he had been here, and I feel a very poor proxy to be here in his stead. So a little bit about David too, and then we'll get to Swamiji as well. David was the third son, born in 1954, February 26th, in Sunnyside, Washington, USA. He attended Sunnyside High School, graduated from the University of Washington, and received a master's degree from City University. He began his working life picking fruit and driving trucks, and after university began a professional career as a mental health counselor. The most important event in David's life was in 1974 when he met his spiritual teacher, Yogeshwarya Mildred Hamilton, who was a direct disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda, the great Indian yogi. Under Mother's direction, David rose to spiritual heights, being ordained as a minister and later as a Yogeshwarya, the only disciple of Mother's to receive that honor. In the late 1980s, Mother stated several times in public that she would leave her spiritual mantle to David. In 1991, after the passing of Mother Hamilton, David carried on as her successor, ministering to her disciples, and over the next few years attracting and initiating his own disciples. Another pivotal time for David was his first trip to India in 1998. David spent much time in Anandashram in South India. This ashram was founded by Swami Ramdas and Mother Krishnabai, and is a place where Mother had undergone many transformative spiritual experiences. David met Swami Satchidananda there and recognized in him one who had attained the highest spiritual realization. Thus began a divine friendship, which David found to be instrumental in his own quest and eventual attainment of full God realization. I'll read the rest here, it's very short. In September 2000, David began 1 year of silence at a retreat in southwestern Washington State, Cloud Mountain. Near the end of this year of silence, he had a spiritual visitation by Mother Hamilton and Paramahansa Yogananda. They appeared together on the deck of his small cabin and were filled with much bubbling joy, as David described it. Later, he married Carla. The year that he was 2001, and then the rest is just about his life. So when we met Swamiji, we felt Mother's presence here so strongly. I was so interested in Yogiji's love of Swami Satchidananda, because Mother felt the same way. She went through very difficult experiences here, where Yogiji was cast out for reasons only known to Papa. Mother was actually brought here through the attraction of Papa. She spent 4.5 months here, and they're in the Gospel of Swami Ramdas in many of the talks. And during that time, Papa stabilized her mind, and then disturbed it, because he then pulled the ego from her in some way. We know that this happened from journals that were written by her husband. And on February 24th, 1958, the Gospel of Swami Ramdas stops at about that point, and no further discussions occur between Mother and Papa. And Mother told us, we didn't know this from Papa, but Mother told us that Swamiji was told to take no more notes down once she was put into those experiences. So, and because of her Christian upbringing, and also all of the experiences that she had had through her own master that were causing her to come to Anandashram, she really needed help. And the stabilization was necessary, and then the launch into the deeper spiritual realms and teachings. They manifested as a mystical crucifixion. And so she went to the Bible many times and saw what she was experiencing inwardly. God would show her that the Bible has an allegorical aspect to it, and there's more similarities to Hinduism than are known. Maybe at that time they were known. We know that the Romans didn't like Christians because they were seen as too Eastern, too Indian. So it does fit that the crucifixion story was more likely a mythological story, or we should emphasize that part of it anyway. The body goes through so many things, and its mother goes chapter and verse on that. But she did say that Swami Satchidananda was the one person who was always supporting her, never criticized, never said a thing. He told me that when I asked him, well, when Mother was going through some of these worst of these experiences, what was Papa doing? And Swamiji says, he was just smiling. So everyone else was panicked. It was a very difficult time. I should mention Lingapa and Kunyambo here were also highly instrumental in this work. So for her mother personally, it was very important to have those two people in her life. And she talked about them very sweetly. Now, I've introduced the Christian aspect. The thing that David had mostly to deal with and may be responsible for some of the stuff that what's it called? There's a term for it, and cancer. But his cancer ended up being in his brain. He had a great deal of brain activity that he was constantly in heat for maybe 30 years. And he wrote me this email in 2014 explaining his situation, which I was aware of on some levels, but not quite to this extent. I will tell you something you already know something about me, but words can never quite tell it all. Each day is a crucifixion for me. The crown of thorns of pain and heat continues unabated down through these many years. And when I focus too much of the mind on certain things, then the heat and pain get turned up. I have learned that this is not something I can muscle my way through and get to the other side. The heat and pain has never been amenable to that. On the other hand, there are other things that this inner force and intelligence allows me to do easily. So I'm able to read a novel, but not a spiritual book. Other times I will read only a spiritual book and not novels. I can go to Seattle for service. He used to give talks in our home. But as soon as we turn into the driveway here, the crown of thorns is activated. There are times when I can watch a movie. Other times I need to be in silence and seclusion. It has been interesting. I feel God and Guru's footprints all over it. But it does limit what I can do, for how long I can do it and when. What I'm allowed to do and what I personally would like to do is often so very different. However, feeling that it is God who works through me in this strange way, I surrender to what God within wills. I write all of this by way of saying, I do not know what God will allow me to do, for how long, or when, but I know what I feel prompted to have happen for Mother and for the work. His will does reign supreme, and I know whatever He does through this form and others will be exactly right for the situation, and we will fulfill what Mother has given us to do. This is in 2014, and then later, about a year later, he was discovered to have cancer and lived for just 3 more years. He had some notion that he was worried about getting the publications done. We had one previous publication called Memories of Mother, but Mother had always intended us to finish some books for her from her talks, and that's the work that he put his heart and soul into, and all of the work is now transcribed. So we expect to publish in the next couple of years more of Mother's things. Now this centenary came up, and we realized that his book on all of his writings on the time he spent with Swamiji were pertinent to this, and so we advanced it to the top of the queue. This is, David talked about it to us, but most of us have not read this journal. Almost no one has. By the way, let me, I didn't do much of the work on this. Kate, my wife, did almost all of it. And where is Kate at? She pulled off something amazing in the time that she had. And we had Rebecca and Lorraine from Seattle helping her also. Devotee mother. So David's talked a lot about Swamiji over the years and loved him so much and recognized what Swamiji had done for him was similar to what Papa had done for Mother. In that, and we see this a lot in the spiritual world, where you have one guru and yet you need help in other gurus. There's so many examples where people go to a second guru, always acknowledging, Mother always acknowledged that Paramahansa Yogananda was her guru, but that she was directed to Papa by him, by what was going through her and by what her experiences were prior to meeting Papa. And so David came here on October 14th, 1998, exactly to the day, 41 years later, the Mother appeared here on October, it says in the Gospel, October 14th, 1957. Very interesting that that happened. So you, or some of you numerologists can maybe help us know what 41 means. But so much of what happened to David during these times with Swamiji, we knew only in part, but Kate assures me, and I still have not read this part of the book yet, most of us have not, that it's very, very interesting, and of course David did tell me many things over the years, so I'm looking forward to reading the details of it. But as he said, Swamiji he saw as his second mother, because he felt so nurtured by him, that perfect smile. The other thing we all notice, my experience so strongly, was the example that he gave. He was always showing us by every interaction. It was so interesting. It still is interesting to watch Swami Muktananda do a similar thing, but to watch him interact with people, and he was trained by Swami Satchidananda. There is this example that's given here that's just unparalleled. I never knew Mataji and Papa, but I certainly knew Swamiji and watched him and learned so much. So, the only final thing I can say is, I moved closely with David all those years, but around the time when he took off, he quit his job in 1997, and then he was in silence for a year. Inwardly, I tracked with him on almost all things. We were so close. But around the year 2000, 2001, I couldn't predict. This is an aspect of God that we know is there. It's unpredictability. It's ever, as Master always said, Yogananda always said, it's ever new joy. It's creation, it's creativity. And that's what I saw in David. I couldn't track with him. There was nothing I had to go based on. It was all new. He became sweeter and more and more profound in his writings and his all of the things that he did, his interactions. He drew more disciples. So many things he did were unknown to us, and he worked outside of his body a lot, doing work that we don't know about. He only alluded to it every now and then. So I only want to say finally that we so appreciate Paramahansa Yogananda's coming to the West and teaching the West. What we have in the West came only from him. Almost, Vivekananda was there, but he didn't live there nor so many years. And so many things that came out from Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, affected so many people in the West. It's unbelievable how many people have read that. Let me just point out, though these are maybe lower ideas, Elvis Presley loved Yogananda. He would pass that book out to his friends. The Beatles also passed it out. It got wide circulation, but not much was known about that from the more popular side. And then we have to thank Mother next and Papa, because we're so grateful to what he and Mataji and Swamiji did for us. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram.
Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Before we move to the last bhajan, we thought it would be appropriate to read the preface of this book, Experiences and Reflections by Param Pujya Swami Satchidananda ji. Imagine a tree with a leafy canopy, wide branches and a sturdy trunk, tall, unaffected by the recurrent rains, thunderstorms, lightnings and wildfires. On the birth and centenary of